The Republican lawmaker from Kentucky named Rand Paul was anticipated to be the least difficult challenge. Hegseth's staff had highlighted the politician in green on their planning document as a secure ally who would offer no significant resistance. This represented their strategic assumption heading into the proceedings. Subsequently, Paul angled toward his microphone and delivered a brief statement that caused Hegseth's complete legal counsel to stiffen, stating he possessed footage the secretary needed to view. This was neither a liberal politician nor a typical political adversary, but rather a conservative libertarian lawmaker who had supported the current executive branch far more frequently than he had opposed it. Crucially, he possessed a recorded visual file. First-time viewers of the Homeless People channel should subscribe immediately, since the footage the senator prepared to broadcast shattered all expectations regarding who would demand accountability from the defense official. This situation transcended standard political theatrics. A conservative lawmaker conducted an independent inquiry, discovered evidence he found impossible to dismiss, and concluded that factual reality held greater importance than partisan loyalty. The events unfolded inside the Senate Foreign Relations Committee chamber designated SD4 on a Thursday afternoon at precisely 2:28 Eastern Time. The official schedule described the gathering as a review concerning Defense Department classified mission approvals and adherence to legislative disclosure mandates. Observers initially deemed the agenda entirely standard. In reality, the situation lacked any standard characteristics whatsoever. The senator entered the chamber completely unaccompanied. He arrived without aides transporting containers, secure metal briefcases, or protected memory devices, carrying only his personal portable computer. He placed the machine upon his workstation without unlatching the screen, remaining quiet throughout the initial hour and a half while observing the proceedings without raising inquiries or writing memos. The secretary appeared exceedingly relaxed throughout the ordeal. The preliminary 90 minutes proved easily manageable and occasionally quite amicable. A conservative colleague representing Tennessee expressed gratitude for his public contributions. Another conservative lawmaker from Mississippi commended the military execution. The defense chief had produced a pair of genuine grins. He genuinely believed the most challenging portion of the testimony had concluded. Eventually, the senator received his opportunity to speak, addressing the official with a carefully controlled and intentional tone. He sounded like an individual who had meticulously evaluated each syllable prior to vocalizing his thoughts. He commenced by articulating his historical backing for numerous military objectives championed by the current executive leadership. He affirmed his faith in robust armed forces alongside his trust in presidential power regarding domestic protection issues. The lawmaker desired those sentiments formally registered before presenting his forthcoming inquiry. The secretary signaled his acknowledgement while expressing his gratitude for the supportive remarks. The senator approved of the response, noting that his subsequent presentation lacked any partisan motivations. He unlatched his portable computer while explaining that the matter involved a fundamental belief he had maintained throughout his professional life. He asserted that federal officials possess no right to deceive the legislature regardless of their political affiliations or ideological leanings. The state apparatus simply must not provide falsehoods to elected representatives. He established this standard as his personal boundary. This metric had consistently served as his uncompromising threshold. Staring directly at the official, he noted the secretary's April 4th appearance on a prominent national television broadcast. The journalist explicitly inquired whether the department had approved any classified missions over the preceding 3 months without alerting legislative oversight panels as mandated by federal security statutes. The official had provided an instantaneous reply. Following a brief hesitation, the senator recited the official's explicit denial and his claim of perfect adherence to legal disclosure protocols during his tenure. The lawmaker angled his display toward the visual projector, causing the broadcast transcription to occupy all viewing screens inside the chamber. He subsequently demanded to know if the cabinet member maintained the accuracy of that declaration while sworn to tell the truth. The defense official adjusted his posture marginally, confirming his stance while vowing to justify their flawless disclosure history before any legislative body. The lawmaker offered a measured nod before accessing a digital document and revealing he had acquired the visual evidence 3 weeks prior. Speaking softly, he clarified that the source was a conservative peer serving on the intelligence panel who felt equally disturbed by the material rather than a partisan adversary. The Internal Monitoring Division of the primary intelligence agency generated this recording to comply with a legally binding legislative summons. The material carries a restricted security designation preventing distribution to foreign nationals. The panel leader approved the removal of its restricted status specifically for this proceeding 2 days beforehand. The senator locked eyes with the official and instructed him to observe the material with intense scrutiny. He initiated the playback, causing the video to project across all available monitors throughout the space. The visual displayed a generic federal meeting space containing standard furnishings, featuring a timestamp from March 12th, representing a date over 3 weeks before the official claimed absolute transparency on national television. A geographic indicator identified the space as a specific gathering area situated within the Primary Defense Administrative Headquarters. The secretary occupied the prominent seating position alongside 4 additional individuals, split evenly between military attire and ordinary business garments. The crisp sound recording captured the defense chief confirming an impending Middle Eastern mission scheduled for the 18th involving both aviation resources and terrestrial units. Stopping briefly, the official declared on tape that they would bypass customary disclosure protocols due to excessive unauthorized information releases originating from the legislative branch. He explicitly mandated informing senior legislative leadership only following the mission's conclusion rather than prior to its execution. A military representative on the recording reminded his superior that federal law demands advance warning for such classified activities barring a direct executive crisis declaration. The cabinet member countered on screen that the commander-in-chief possessed awareness of the situation, deeming that knowledge entirely adequate. He instructed his subordinates to formally record the gathering as a preliminary strategy meeting rather than a final approval event. He announced plans to issue the actual mandate on the 17th, utilizing an alternative administrative route. The lawmaker paused the playback, allowing the heavy implications to permeate the chamber. He verbally reiterated the recorded instruction to mischaracterize the approval gathering as merely a preparatory discussion. Directing his gaze toward the defense official, he noted the specific calendar date of the recording. He accused the secretary of ordering personnel to mislabel a classified mission approval for the explicit purpose of circumventing legislative disclosure mandates. Less than a month later, the official had assured a national news network that all classified approvals during his tenure adhered perfectly to legal transparency rules. The chamber refrained from an immediate explosive reaction during this particular instance. Instead, a profound quiet descended, representing the unique stillness that occurs when people require a moment to process a truly astonishing and undeniable reality. Following that brief hesitation, utter chaos consumed the space. A liberal representative from Connecticut had immediately risen from her chair. A conservative lawmaker hailing from Utah pivoted sharply to converse with his staff member. The presiding officer desperately grabbed his wooden mallet to restore order. Broadcasting equipment rapidly pivoted to capture the defense official's reaction. The secretary remained entirely motionless in his seat. Rather than losing its color, his expression adopted a practiced emptiness, typical of an individual internally processing a severe crisis while refusing to display any external distress. At this juncture, a brief pause in the narrative is necessary. Viewers who support legislative oversight regarding classified federal missions must boost this broadcast immediately. The promotion icon sits adjacent to the approval button, offering users 3 complimentary boosts every 24 hours. The community possesses a single week to elevate this content into the highest tier of promoted platform broadcasts, meaning every engagement matters deeply, so execute the action before continuing, as the senator prepared to display subsequent footage captured shortly after the initial recording. The defense chief's primary legal counsel shifted forward with intense urgency. The official raised a single palm to silence his lawyer, addressing the lawmaker with a remarkably stable and disciplined vocal tone. He claimed the Middle Eastern strategy session featured extraordinarily delicate safety factors, necessitating an adjusted disclosure method permitted by executive military powers. The lawmaker elevated his own hand to interrupt, asserting his comprehensive understanding of the powers bestowed upon the defense chief by federal security legislation. He emphasized having reviewed the specific law countless times throughout his career. He adamantly declared that the legislation contains zero provisions allowing an official to deliberately mislabel a mission approval to dodge legislative transparency requirements. Having searched the text thoroughly, he confirmed such a loophole simply does not exist. Returning his attention to his portable computer, he revealed that a subsequent gathering occurred less than a week later. He activated the next visual file, which displayed the identical meeting area on March 16th, occurring precisely 24 hours prior to the approval date mentioned in the initial footage. The recording featured the exact same individuals situated in identical positions. The captured footage showed the secretary declaring that legislative disclosure would definitively not occur. He justified the decision by claiming he had evaluated the situation and determined the safety hazards were simply too severe. He warned that any unauthorized information released prior to the 18th would entirely collapse the mission. Scanning his subordinates, he ordered them to claim that senior legislative leaders received updates via unofficial routes if questioned, establishing that exact phrase as their mandatory response. A non-military assistant on the recording informed the official that unofficial routes fail to qualify as legally valid disclosure mechanisms beneath federal law. The defense chief abruptly finalized the matter by insisting the paperwork would reflect his chosen narrative regardless. The senator halted the playback, repeating the assistant's warning alongside the secretary's damning command to falsify the administrative records. Staring at the official, he outlined how the cabinet member fabricated a non-existent disclosure protocol, forced personnel to record it as factual truth, and utilized the deception to convince lawmakers that the mission involved proper legal transparency. He reminded the room that weeks later, the official shamelessly boasted about perfect legal adherence on a major news network. Rising to his feet, the lawmaker expressed a desire to speak with complete candor. He admitted dedicating an entire fortnight after acquiring the video, searching for any context that might excuse the glaring misconduct. He had ordered his team to scour legal texts, requested the panel's attorneys search for historical parallels, and even consulted a pair of former intelligence agency chiefs. He confessed his deep desire to find any valid reason to avoid initiating this exact confrontation. After a brief silence, he conceded that zero exculpatory interpretations existed. He bluntly stated that the official executed a classified mission without legislative warning, fabricated a non-existent disclosure protocol as a shield, and provided false testimony to the public on broadcast media. Pivoting toward the panel, he informed the presiding officer that, speaking as a conservative representative, legislative monitoring powers remain entirely nonpartisan. He declared that such authority is the exclusive domain of the legislative branch as a whole. He argued that presidential deception impacts the entire governmental body regardless of partisan majorities, refusing to ignore the transgressions simply because the deceit originated from his own ideological faction. Grabbing a piece of paperwork, he formally proposed transferring the case to federal prosecutors to explore felony charges regarding breaches of classified disclosure laws and providing untrue declarations to lawmakers. He additionally requested the intelligence panel execute a comprehensive audit concerning every classified mission approval granted by the defense chief since the 20th of January. The chamber descended into absolute silence as attendees processed a conservative lawmaker demanding federal criminal probes against a conservative executive official. A liberal representative from Virginia immediately supported the proposal, followed swiftly by a conservative colleague from Alaska. The measure succeeded without delay. The senator finally shut his portable computer. Glancing toward the official of final instance, he reiterated his profound reluctance to initiate the proceedings. He emphasized his prolonged desire to discover an error in his own assessment over the preceding fortnight. The visual evidence ultimately removed that possibility, as did his personal moral compass. He reclined into his chair while the legislative session progressed. However, an irreversible transformation had washed over the entire chamber. The shift transcended mere partisan strategy and touched upon a significantly deeper foundation. That profound pivot occurred the exact second a conservative lawmaker stared down a conservative executive official and declared an absolute refusal to ignore objective factual proof. Ensure you follow the Homeless People channel immediately, since our next broadcast will unveil the complete intelligence monitoring document that initially provoked the legislative summons. This represents the exact dossier a conservative politician obtained and found impossible to sweep aside. The release will expose every classified mission, every illicit approval, and every legally required disclosure that failed to materialize. The visual recordings remain entirely authentic. The removal of restricted status stands fully sanctioned, and the legal commands carry absolute legislative authority. Furthermore, Pete Hegseth recently faced referral to federal prosecutors by an ideological ally for executing classified missions without legislative warning and broadcasting falsehoods concerning the matter to the entire country. Please strike the approval icon and distribute this content across all available platforms. This narrative completely bypasses standard political divisions. A conservative lawmaker simply established an uncrossable ethical boundary. Absolute legal adherence was the promised standard. Unfortunately, that assertion lacked any factual basis, and the undeniable truth now permanently resides within the official historical archive.